Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Another strong plug for you guys to join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. You guys are getting my notes from practice, the inside stuff that I'm seeing out on the field, even more in depth than I just went previously on the podcast today. If you want all of that, join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. It's a $5 a month charge, but the best part is you get a 14-day free trial, 2 full weeks to see if it's the right option for you. Join today by clicking the link in the show notes below, whether you're watching this on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, or just reach out. We'll get you squared away on social media or email. We can get you taken care of that way as well as a member of the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right. Before we go on today's show, some news over the weekend. The BYU women's basketball coach, Amber Whiting, has used the term, quoted, parted ways with BYU. In 3 seasons, she never posted a winning record after taking over for Jeff Judkins. And I was mildly surprised that the final outcome was her being let go, or as they said, parting ways. I think this was more of a, let's say, a Gary Croton parting of ways, as it were. Remember, Gary Croton resigned under immense pressure back in 2004 for BYU. I think that was more of this situation. I was surprised that it came down to this because I thought with the uncertainty around the AD situation with Tom Homo retiring, I would have thought that they would have given Amber Whiting at least a 1-year reprieve to see what she could do. She's been a very good recruiter. There's zero doubt about her ability to recruit. She's brought in her daughter, Amari Whiting, who's a top-tier athlete. Delaney Gibb, who just won Big 12 Freshman of the Year, was an absolute incredible signing for BYU. And overall, the recruiting's been at a fairly high level for BYU women's basketball under Amber Whiting. The concern is, though, that the results on the court were lacking. Remember, Jeff Judkins had this program rolling. They put together as a 20-some-odd win season his final year at BYU. And Juddy, I'll acknowledge a spade for a spade. He didn't want to necessarily retire when he did. I know that Juddy was getting towards the end because he's getting up there in age. But they decided to make a move and ultimately have Juddy step away and insert Amber Whiting as head coach. I think if they were to redo this all over again, and I'm never going to get a straight answer out of BYU on this, I'll be very blunt about that. But I believe if BYU would have done things differently, looking in retrospect now, they would allow Juddy to hang on for 1 or 2 more years because it really felt like that's all he had left in him because Jeff had been absolutely awesome for BYU, an incredible 2-decade run at the helm of the BYU women's basketball program. I would say outside of Elaine Michaelis, probably one of the best women's coaches at BYU in their history, but that's beside the point. I think if they would have done this over again, you allow Juddy to have 1 or 2 more years. Amber Whiting comes in as an assistant coach on that team with the whole thought that she is the head coach in waiting to take over the program. They ultimately decided to go a different route. As we all know, Juddy gets sent into retirement, and they insert Amber Whiting. She'd only coached the AAU level and high school level before taking over a Power 4 job at BYU, and it just didn't work out. And there are so many different reasons why you could say that didn't work out, but there have been strong rumblings in the recent weeks that the roster was discontent with the direction the program was taking, and there was potential that a lot of players could hit the transfer portal and look at other options. Now, we all know that Amari Whiting has already told On3 that she will transfer. That's the least surprising news in all of this. She's the head coach, the former head coach's daughter. So Amari's not going to stick around. She obviously has the option to return to BYU if she so desires, depending on who they hire. But you've got to move quickly, it feels like, to secure this roster for BYU, especially hopefully keeping an athlete like Delaney Gibb around BYU. Yes, I know she's dating Jaeger Demon. I get all that. But the bigger point is the future of the BYU women's basketball program, it's going to be in the spotlight simply because the men's basketball program has so much spotlight on it. It's going to obviously kind of push over to the women's basketball team. Is Lee Camard ready to take over that program? Maybe so. There were many that thought that Lee should have gotten the opportunity to succeed Jeff Judkins 3 years ago. Lee's been a loyal soldier. He has been a very, very strong coach at BYU for many, many years. Is this his opportunity to finally take over a program and make it his own? TBD. But I would not get tunnel vision if I'm BYU, whether that's Tom Homo making the decision, whether it's Brian Santiago, who is the sport administrator and has really kind of been the main guy over both basketball programs forever, it feels like. Whoever is making this decision or decisions, I think it's the bigger picture because obviously the board of trustees and the like will have their say on the final option as who the head coach will be. They need to spread a wide net. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say, guys, I've got a list of 5 names for BYU women's basketball coach. I'm going to lay out for you right now. I acknowledge that I am very much lacking in that department, but circumstances being what they were with the women's basketball team are that they are in a very, very tough conference, obviously the Big 12, and it's a big opportunity at the same time for the right coach to come in and get things going once again. They weren't far off from posting winning records under Amber Whiting, and as I said, I would have felt like one more year probably would have been just considering with the AD uncertainty, but she ultimately decided it was in her best interest to look at other options. And obviously BYU felt the same way. So they part ways. And now you look to the future for the BYU women's basketball team. I think it's got a big opportunity on it. Obviously, if you can have Delaney Gibb stick around as kind of the centerpiece of this team and build around her, that's a good place to start. And a ton of coaches out there probably noticed that Delaney Gibb, was she like 10-time freshman of the year, freshman player of the week in the Big 12 this past year, on her way to unanimous Big 12 freshman of the year honors. So that is a piece that if you can keep in Provo and build around that, it's a nice building block to have in the women's game. Whoever takes over, they are going to have pressure on them because Jeff Judkins had it rolling. It's kind of fallen off here under Amber Whiting, and now, who gets to step in and pick up the pieces? And can the person who replaces the person finally get it going once again? That's a very interesting situation for women's basketball, and I am very curious as to who gets that job and what they're ultimately able to accomplish here at the Big 12 level, because I would also imagine that the resources will be requisite for BYU to compete even in women's basketball. Well, in theory, they should be there. They should have all the resources. They have top-notch facilities. They share that the Marriott Annex with the men's basketball program, and we're talking weight room. All that type of stuff is top of the line. So there's a lot of good things about this women's basketball job, and it should attract, I think, a high number of suitors. But obviously, it's a unique institution. Speaking of BYU, and you got to find the right fit. So if it's Lee Cummard or anybody else, I will obviously be rooting them on. I'm looking forward to seeing who ultimately gets a shot at that job. All right, that's going to do it for this Monday edition of the show. As always, thank you for all y'all's support. Coming up on tomorrow's show, we're going to dig into some recruiting. Notice something interesting with 24/7 Sports and their top tier of recruits, their top 300 list. There's a lot of guys that BYU has interest in on that list, and there's a lot of, let's say, positive talk about BYU. Is it founded or is it unfounded? Is it something that BYU fans should buy into? We'll delve into that tomorrow here on the podcast. But as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And once again, thank you for making making the show a part of your day and being an everydayer with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.